Good evening, and welcome to the Putnam Valley Board of Education work session / business meeting of October 10th, 2019. Can you please stand and join me as we salute our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So the first order of business, I'd like resolve to approve the minutes of the business meeting of September 26, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
When I would announce that the treasurer's report for July 2019 is available in the business office. And now, moving on to presentations. Dr. Left, do you want to introduce the first one?
Depends who's the first one.
It's the exciting external auditors from O'Connor Davies.
In that case, I'd like to welcome our exciting external auditors.
Wow.
That was not sarcastic.
That's a nice lead-in for you.
They were the exciting.
Welcome.
There's no pressure now.
We usually get a larger crowd when we come to board meetings. But
Well, usually you're after like singing children or children who have saved a puppy or some wonderful, beautiful thing. So I'm very excited about this audit report. Go ahead, commence.
thank you. My name is Jeff Shaver, partner with PKF O'Connor Davies. I'm filling in for your engagement partner, who's Chris Koff. He's in California right now for his daughter's wedding. He'll be there all week. Alongside me here is Barry Gamzon. He was the in-charge auditor here for field work and supervising the entire audit. I'm going to talk today a little bit about some required communications, and then I'll go right into the general fund results of operations, so show some revenue and expenditure history, fund balance, and finish off with debt service. In terms of management's responsibilities, the key thing here is that management's responsible for the financial statements, selecting and implementing appropriate accounting policies, presenting the financial statements in accordance with GAAP, maintaining effective internal controls, compliance with laws and regulations, and setting the proper tone at the top. We as auditors, first and foremost, we're responsible for the independent auditor's report that accompanies the audited financial statements. I'm happy to report that your financial statements have received an unmodified opinion. It's also referred to as a clean opinion, and that's the most favorable opinion a school district can receive. Along with the audited financial statements, there's an extra classroom activities report, which summarizes the revenues and expenses of the extra classroom activities. There's a required communications to those charged with governance, which is some of the information I'm speaking to you about now. And that's accompanied with our management letter or recommendations to management on how to improve operations. We're required to communicate any fraud or illegal acts. I'm happy to report that there were no fraud or illegal acts discovered during the course of our audit. We had no difficulties with management, no uncorrected misstatements, or to say it in another word, there were no adjustments we felt needed to be made to the financial statements that were not made. So if we recommended any adjustments, they have been made and posted to the books and records. We had no disagreements with management, and the timeline in terms of when we did our work started back in June for preliminary audit work. The actual field work or the bulk of our audit testing happened in the second week in July, which is rather fast for most school districts, don't start quite that early. And we completed everything by September the 23rd, and obviously we're here now finalized and doing our final presentation. This is the general fund schedule of revenues and expenditures compared to budget. 2019, this is a 5-column presentation, highly summarized form. It's in more detail in the audited financial statements. The first column is the original budget as adopted by the board and the voters, with the only addition to that being open purchase orders from the previous year that increased that amount. The second column is the final budget, which encompasses any amendments or transfers approved by the board during the year. The third column is the actual revenues and expenditures. The fourth column is the encumbrances. That's or open purchase orders that will carry forward into the next year's budget. And the last column is the variance between the final budget and the actual plus the encumbrances. When the original budget was adopted, it was anticipated $47.7 million would be collected. Actual revenues were $49,215,000. That represents a positive budgetary surplus of $1,484,000. Expenditures were initially budgeted at $52 million, revised slightly upwards to $52.1 million. Actual expenditures for the year were $50,500,000. After accounting for encumbrances of $500,000, that's a positive budgetary surplus of just under $1.1 million. So from a budgetary point of view, you generated $1,484,000 on the revenue side of the budget, $1,067,000 on the expenditure budget. Add the two together, you get about a $2.6 million budgetary surplus. So you did better than your budget by that, $2.6 million. However, when the budget was adopted, you anticipated utilizing the $3.1 million of fund balance, and the difference is what the actual change in fund balance was for the year. So there was actually a net decrease to the actual fund balance of $610,000. The general fund started the year at $9,722,000 and ended the year at $9,112,000. I'll take you through a little bit more details on how we got there. This is a little bit more detail on just the revenue side of the budget. We're accounting for about 98% of the revenues here. Property taxes is the largest revenue for the district at $32.4 million, and school tax relief reimbursement through New York State at just under $4.3 million. The non-property tax distribution from the county is your sales tax money. Earnings on investments of $383,000 generated a surplus of $263,000 as interest rates were more favorable than anticipated. State aid was just under $11,100,000. That represents a surplus of about $612,000. And the refund of prior year's expenditures, which is a miscellaneous income item, generated a positive budgetary surplus of about $155,000. This is, I like to say, for your viewing pleasure. It just shows a little 5-year history on some of these major revenue categories. You can see the trend on the property tax line, $30,911,000 5 years ago, and then it has grown to $32.4 million for the 2019 fiscal year. And you can kind of see how state aid has been tracking over the last 5 years, $9.7 million 5 years ago, trending upwards to our $11.1 million for 18-19. These are some of the major expenditure categories. You see we've accounted for about 80% of your general fund expenditures here. The variance, I'll just point out, the variance with the budget you see is kind of sprinkled about the entire budget, so there's no one category that stands out as where you're generating your surplus, so you're kind of getting it throughout your budget. Again, the same categories on expenditures, a 5-year history. You can see 5 years ago, the expenditures, these specific expenditures totaled $36.2 million, and for 2019, they're up to $40,800,000. So this is just for the board to look at to see a little bit of history. This chart shows the general fund balance broken down into all the buckets required by governmental accounting standards over the last 5 years. You can see the first column is the 2019 fund balance. The school district has non-spendable fund balance of $262,000. The largest category is restricted funds, and that totals $5,468,000. You have the various reserves as set aside in the chart: repair reserve, property loss and liability reserve, tax certiorari reserve, employee benefit accrued liability reserve, $645,000, ERS retirement contributions of $1,820,000, a new reserve allowed by New York State, authorized by New York State, is set aside as $404,000, and your future capital project reserve is just about $1 million. So that's the total. That's all your restricted funds at $5,468,000. The assigned category is encumbrances that'll carry forward into the next year, $513,000. plus amounts designated for subsequent years' budget. So pieces of this fund balance that are utilized to balance the budget for the 1920 school year. And the residual amount of fund balance, or what's left over after accounting for all those categories, is what we refer to as the unassigned fund balance, and that is $2,067,000, and that's at 4% of the next year's budget, or the 1920 budget, and that's the maximum amount allowed by New York State. So you're currently at the 4% allowed by New York State. And you can see the history over the last 5 years, the district has been right at that maximum amount allowed by New York State. And also total fund, another metric we like to look at is the total fund balance as a percentage of your budget. At the end of 19, you see it's at 17.63%. It's been around that area for the last 5 years. It's been as low as 17.3. It's been as high as 21.2, but it's kind of been fluctuating in that range over the last 5 years. This is just a brief snapshot of some of your other operating funds. You have the debt service fund with ending fund balance of $4 million. That's funds that are set aside to be used to offset future debt payments. So you can only use it for that restricted purpose. I know you during 18-19, you earmarked some of those funds to offset debt service cost. In 19-20, you've done the same, and that is the amount left over at June 30th, 2019. And after, I know you've designated, I believe, $1 million for the 19-20 school year. So come next year, when we're standing here, we anticipate that number to be about $3 million left for future years. The capital projects fund is $1,064,000. Those funds have already been set aside for specific projects, so they're already kind of restricted to those projects that are approved. The school lunch fund stands at $245,000. That's the operations of your breakfast and lunch program. And the special purpose fund, or your scholarship and trust money, is about $107,000. This is a debt service summary. This is your outstanding debt as of June 30th, 2019. Bonded debt outstanding is $14,395,000. I'm sorry, that was the original amount issued. The outstanding amount of June 30th, 2019 is $7,689,000. The bottom of the chart shows when those principal and interest payments are coming due. You'll notice in 2020 and 2021, the principal amount due was $1,555,000, and then a drop off to $695,000 in 2022. I understand you've approved, a new project has been approved, and some of the bonding has already started for that project. I think the plan would be for that debt service on the new project to be offsetting the old debt service that's coming off in that 2022 fiscal year, to keep your debt service payments relatively smooth. But this is kind of how it stands right now. And the only other debt outstanding is an energy performance contract. Upgrades done, loans taken out to do upgrades for energy efficiency related projects, and that stands at about $6.5 million at June 30th, 2019. With that said, are there any questions or from the board or comments? Anything I didn't cover that you'd like me to cover?
I noticed, and I don't remember what slide it was on, the earnings on investments jumped significantly. I'm sorry, I have to try to find the slide. I should have written it down.
Page 7.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. It was 25,691, and it's now 383,000 and change.
Absolutely.
Just good planning?
It's the market.
Okay.
So interest rates, 5 years ago, the interest rates were, teeny tiny, dismal. And in 2018 and 19, they've been better than they have in years.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the bad news is I think they're starting to trail back down. So you may not see quite that level again, at least for 2020. But it's just a function of the market and going out and investing the money the best you can. School districts are fairly restricted in New York State into what they can put their money in. There's not a lot of investments there's nothing exotic you can do. It's really some certain
Pretty
investment
safe and
pools,
conservative.
treasury bills, repurchase agreements, certificates of deposit that need to be collateralized. So there's not really much more you can do.
We can't take risk with taxpayer
No, there's
dollars. so-
no common stocks. You can't even do bonds unless they're New York State muni bonds.
Okay.
So it's heavily restricted
I
investment environment.
was just curious, because that seemed like, even though it's not a lot of money, budget-wise, it was a big jump.
Certainly was.
So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Jill and the rest of the members of our business department. I know there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into preparing everything for these internal audits. And I don't know if you guys can go back to, I don't know who makes these decisions, but we need to come up with something a little catchier than an unmodified opinion. We need something like it's going to be a little jazzy, maybe.
I like clean. Clean opinion is nice.
Clean opinion.
Like clean
I mean,
meeting?
if you said, at least you clarified that that's the most favorable opinion you can get, which made me feel good. But yeah, unmodified opinion, we need to come up with something a little more exciting. If you guys can
It's
talk,
funny, the
talk to the
LCPA
powers.
changed it to that not too long ago. So we'll see what they come up with
They're
next.
giving you auditors a bad name. You got to come up with something better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Parmalee and Ms. Cohen, has the audit committee met about this audit yet, or will
We
they?
have.
or-
So I'd like to thank Guy and Tom Sawyer, who just joined the committee. So the audit committee met with the external auditors this evening prior to the meeting. The auditors presented the information that you've just heard, and it's the consensus of those present at the meeting to accept their report and the district response / corrective action plan management letter for the external auditor. So they did make a couple of recommendations, and we have taken the corrective action to.
Okay, anything else from the
Clarify.
board? I want to add my thanks for Jill and all of her. It was a lot of time as the school transitioned from
It's a
spring
team
to
effort.
summer.
It truly is a team effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, turning off this slide. Okay. Is this internal auditors now?
So our next report, I'd like to invite our guests from McCune Partners up to talk about our capital project and construction management internal audit. Thank you.
So the internal auditors aren't exciting?
Yeah.
So exciting.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Mark Regan. I'm an executive director with Acune Partners. I'm actually filling in for Dave Moran, who couldn't make it tonight. Dave did oversee the audit, and Sharon Eason's joining me. She actually performed the audit for us. So we're going to go through a few things on the audit. First, if you, I have to do this, right?
Yeah, you put a presentation.
Work your magic, Dan.
Technically challenged here. So the scope of the audit was to evaluate the procedures and controls around the capital projects and construction management. And this was the audit that was approved by the, based on our risk assessment by the audit committee. We're Windows people. So some of the audit procedures that we utilized during this process was to review your policies and procedures, to interview key staff, and to actually examine the books and records of the district.
There you go.
There you go.
Doesn't take much.
He can be taught.
So rather than unmodified, we have a rating system of satisfactory, which means that there are little or no issues, needs improvement, which means there are some internal control issues which should be addressed by the district, or unsatisfactory, which means that there's significant control problems. I'm going to hand it over to Sharon now to discuss the results of the audit.
We'll give you a slight improvement on the rating of satisfactory.
I'm good with satisfactory.
They took out adequate.
I like being satisfactory.
So for this audit, we looked at 5 different areas. We looked at the contract bid process. We looked at contract payments, contract changes, contract monitoring, and the capital project procedures, all of which were rated satisfactory. And as Mark just said, satisfactory is the best rating that you get, means that the internal controls are in place, and us as auditors did not find any deficiencies in that area. However, we do have a few recommendations that we presented at the audit committee meeting earlier today. And the recommendations are as such, that the district should continue its procedures and controls for capital project and construction management. The district should utilize a mechanical date and time stamp for received sealed bids, and that the business office may want to add an additional review step to confirm that a complete and identical set of signed copies sent to the New York State is filed in the business office. And essentially what that means is that when we spoke to Jill, they have already implemented, since we've done this audit, a checklist that will now serve as the cover sheet for what's filed in the business office, so that matches what's sent to the New York State office. And the same thing with the date and time stamp. And because there was some kind of issue with the date and time stamp, it was not implemented at the time when we performed the audit, but since then, conversation with Jill, that has been corrected.
These are really minor housekeeping items.
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
No.
No.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Jill, and your staff.
Appreciate it. That was very exciting. Thank you very much.
It was satisfactory.
Jill promised maybe bought a new one of those mechanical date stamper things.
I have an unmodified rating on that wonderful presentation. All right.
And just the audit committee also,
Yes.
you know,
Thank you.
heard basically what they just presented. They answered all our questions. We had asked them to look at this specifically because of the upcoming building project, because we wanted to be sure that whatever we had in place was satisfactory, or above satisfactory, so that there would not occur any problems in this next phase of building projects. So so we agreed last year to have them look at this. It was the consensus of those present on the committee to accept their report and and the district response / corrective action management letter for the internal audit also.
Okay. So that was number 3. Thanks. So we're on to 4. That was number 3, Barbara, right? You were the comments from Audit Committee
Yes.
Chairperson. Okay. All right, so we're now moving on.
Sure. So I'd like to welcome our consultants from Theresa May and Walt Hauser from KG&D and Kevin Sawyer from Triton Construction to provide sort of an update on logistics and phasing of the capital project. And later in our agenda, we'll be asking the board to pass a resolution essentially releasing the construction drawings and allowing KG&D to send those on to State Ed for their approval. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having
I
us.
said, you've been around so much, I called you my colleague. They're going to put you on the payroll. I'll talk to Jill.
I appreciate that. Sure. So I think we need a little bit of technical assistance, just changing the PowerPoint presentation. But thanks for having us tonight. I've got some new vocabulary now, unmodified opinions, but seems to be the key word this evening. So we were here last month with some design information about your wonderful capital project. Tonight, it's a little more administrative. Essentially, we're at a point where we're finishing the construction drawings and we're getting prepared to submit the project to SCD. So we just want to talk a little bit about that process. And then what we've been what we will be working on in the next couple of weeks, what we have developed in terms of construction, phasing, and logistics as we move now into a permitting approval and bid process, and then very shortly, really, into a construction process. So I'll let Teresa talk a little bit about what's going to happen once we submit the project to SED and what our options are.
So when we submit the project to SED, there are two ways to submit. You start with the standard review process, and if you opt, you can go for a third-party review. Your architects would just notify SED that you would want to go for the third-party review. And in the past year, the third-party review has really shrunken the backlog of projects that were being reviewed at SED. And when we checked the queue yesterday for this presentation, it turns out that the standard review right now is running at about 8 to 10 weeks. And the third-party review, which does require an extra fee, is running at about 6 to 8 weeks. That would put our approval date around the beginning of December, end of November, and that wouldn't really change our target bid date of January of 2020. The January of 2020 bid date has been on the books since we started our construction, or since Triton established the construction schedule way back in April. And a January bid date is really a favorable time to bid because you don't have the holidays distracting the contractors. So right now we're advising that you go with the standard review process. If we're seeing in the next couple of weeks that the standard review process is slowing down, we can request to be put into the third-party review queue. That would be a fee, but that would ensure that we have our documents approved for the January bid. And then once we go out for bid in January, it takes a few weeks to vet all of the bidders and award the project, and construction would start in March of 2020. Are there any questions about that?
When you talk about the fee involved, how much is that? Do you have an
It's
estimate?
approximately $20,000, so it is significant. And when we saw that it wouldn't really gain you a lot of time, it would really be a 2-week time period that we're talking about right now, we thought that it would be best to go with the standard review process. So now I'm going to turn it over to Triton, and they're going to talk about construction phasing and logistics. Oh, Kevin Sawyer with Triton.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to use that word outstanding tonight, beyond satisfactory, because the truth of the matter is that, and I apologize for how small that is, and I hope that we can make this available to you in paper form. But what you're looking at right there is a master schedule. So when we started working with the district some time ago, we developed a schedule that we all agreed upon we would follow. And oftentimes that schedule, because of various things, shifts one way or the other. But what I'm very happy to announce, and what's very outstanding about this, is that although you can't see it, there's 2 bars there. One is the target and one is the actual, okay? We are to the date on target with our schedule, which is absolutely fantastic. And it doesn't happen all that often, so I commend the whole team for sticking to their guns to make sure this process takes place in the time that we promised the district. We talked a little bit about design, and now we want to talk about next steps. What happens now moving forward? So we have had regular meetings once a month with the administrators who have all given us feedback, as well as your committees and various other user groups to help us get to where we are today. What we've been doing in the past month is we've been talking about logistics and safety while construction is taking place, because that's obviously extremely important to make sure that we all are on the same page about what it is that we have to do about that. So we've been spending a lot of time this past month developing those programs to implement them into the contract drawings. Right now, based on our anticipation of the completion of the SED review process, we believe we'll be bidding either way that you choose to go with an expedited review or standard review sometime in January, and having the bids opened in March, which is a perfect bidding time. Construction is planned in each one of the buildings at various time periods. At the elementary school, all that work is interior, so we're planning on doing that work over the summer. Okay? I'm going to skip down to the high school. The high school is also a set period of time, so we're anticipating to start that sometime in April, right after the spring thaw, get into the ground, and have that done for January 2021. All right, somewhere around the first of the year, maybe a week or two into January. All right. And the middle school, there's a few different things, exciting things that are going on there. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think you may have seen this before, maybe not as much detail, but this is the Wellness Center addition on the back of the high school. We are proposing to put a construction access roadway off of your main entrance drive that leads on to and around to what is now your practice football field, and utilize that practice football field for parking and staging and logistics for the Wellness Center, but also parking for the work that's going to take place in the middle school as well. Okay? It's really hard to see, but there is a fence laid out around the whole entire site for safety and protection. There'll be some various signages and things like that. And then at the end of the day, we're going to leave the old roadway in place so that it could perhaps become something else that the district may want to use, like an emergency access route for emergency vehicles, or part of a run. You've got a cross-country track that's through the woods there. Maybe you can utilize that. Okay. Now, the middle school has been broken down into 4 phases. The first phase, the things that'll happen first will be, we have to put in a corridor in the back because we are eliminating egress that is currently going into where the courtyard is, which will be your new addition. So we have to make up some additional door access to alleviate any egress issues. So that's going to take place kind of through what's the girls' locker room now. Also, we're going to be putting in various connecting doors on the second floor to minimize or maximize egress on the second floor for the same reasons. You're going to see fencing going up, and then the first thing you're going to start seeing is underground utilities, relocating water services and things like that. The second phase is the actual beginning of the courtyard fill-in work. That's going to take place somewhere around April 1, approximately, and then end before school starts in September. The third phase is the kitchen, cafeteria, and music rooms. We're going to take those over the end of the first week of May, and again, turn that over, completely rebuilt, completely gutted out and rebuilt for September 2nd. That's a lot of work. That's an aggressive schedule, but we're committed to making those dates. The fourth phase is various other work that's going to take place all throughout the building. So there's some internal spaces on the first and second floor, nurse's office, some other offices. In the classroom section, there's the gymnasium, front entry overhang, and things like this. All that will take place, the rest of that work will take place over the summer. All right. So this is the staging area that we're proposing for the work. The area that's hatched in red is the area that we'll be using for concrete trucks and cranes and material storage and those types of things. It will require a little finessing around, so we've eliminated a couple of parking spots, but we think that we kind of keeping an eye on the parking, the regular parking, and we think that we have minimized it and maximized it enough where it should not affect your normal everyday parking. We're going to have to black out some parking lines in order to make the bus loops and the other loops work around so that it can still be accessed back to the loading dock. But I think all in all, this will work very good for what it is that we need to do. And, it seems like a lot right now, but it's actually a very short period of time, so just keep that in mind. This is just a color diagram of the phases that I just referred to. Phase 1 is that little purple spot up there where we're creating that corridor. Phase 2 is the darker blue area that also encompasses one existing classroom. And then the lighter kind of gray color there is the third phase, and one of the more difficult phases. And then the fourth phase is actually in white. There you can see the gymnasium and the other rooms that are associated with that there. These are the couple of doors upstairs that I talked about that we have to install for egress, emergency egress. And so this is kind of where we go from here now that we've talked about logistics and staging. Talked about submitting for permitting, finalizing all the cost estimates. Then we prepare for a bid. That's going to happen in January, February. Finalize owner contract-to-contract forms, identifying bid packages and final bid schedule. And then generating bidders lists will all be taking place over the course of November, December, and January, okay? And I'm sure we'll be meeting with you at some point, perhaps before or after the bids, during the bids, to update you again on how we did. And that's it. You have any questions?
I just have one question. The block out of the parking spaces is during school time.
Correct.
I couldn't tell how far over it was. Yeah, that's the side. How does it affect bus drop-off? Because I know we have all the buses arriving at once now. So, do you want to answer that?
Right. So what you can't see on here is before you get to that staging area, they're essentially going to create a new loop.
Oh, okay.
So the buses, the elementary school buses will still, the buses will still drop off in front of the middle school and then loop back through the parking lot.
Okay.
So there'll be sort of a road will be created in the middle of those parking spaces and allow them to loop back around. Parent drop-off will remain the same.
At the earlier loop.
At the earlier one, another change will be we're actually going to double stack buses in front of the
high school.
Okay.
So, because now we can't put buses through that construction zone
Right.
for students to board, so we're going to double stack buses in front of the high school, which involves a certain amount of logistics for they have to now arrive in order, right, stage out on the driveway, because they can no longer sort of parallel park if they show up, not in the correct order in which they have to leave. So that's a change, but we already have drawings done for all of those things. Dave Spittle's already designed sort of the routes and where the buses are going to be. So there'll be a tremendous amount of communication that'll take place with the parents and the students and the community as a whole before any of this actually starts, so people are aware of the changes, and we'll dismiss a little early to give students a chance to make sure they know where their new bus locations are. And for anyone who's ever done construction in their house, there's no clean way to do it, so we're trying to be as proactive and as creative as possible to think about all of these things now. The amount of hours we spent just talking about this one slide in terms of the contractor's staging area, where it could be and how big it could be. Dave's been out there several times counting parking spaces to get a sense of how many spaces we can live without. But you know what, it'll be beautiful when it's all done.
Well, and we're only 2 years into all the buses arrive at once. So if you had told me 3 years ago we would be doing this, you're like, what are you smoking?
It's a
Because there's
well-oiled
no
machine.
way.
It's a well-oiled machine now.
I have a question regarding the parking spots. Are there going to be additional ones built during this somewhere to offset the ones that are being taken away? I know it's more than a couple being taken away, so how are we going to?
So we've been auditing the number of parking spaces that are free in a basis now, and the numbers have been in the 50s. So we're losing, I don't remember what the number was. 45 spots. We have talked about striping some new spots on where the extended blacktop area is by the turf field over there. We can stripe some spots there, as well as the area closer to the trailhead for the wellness trail. So we know we've sort of recouped some space. And we could certainly paint some spots in to recoup some parking spaces. But worst case scenario, we think we have the spaces we need to accommodate what is a regular day traffic. Anytime there's certain special events or things like that, we're going to struggle with parking for during that time. There just was nowhere else to put that staging area. At one time, we were talking about putting gates and opening and closing it, but that was just sort of a logistical nightmare to keep people out and when you open it, when they're closed. And at the end of the day, the last thing we want to do is disrupt the construction, because every time we're going to disrupt the flow of construction, there's more and more likelihood that they're not going to be done in September. So I would rather sacrifice parking spaces now, have time to plan for it, and knowing that I'm not restricting their ability. Because otherwise, we'd have to say, well, you can't bring any materials in for this time, and then at this time, and then you can't have any construction workers in the zone during this time, and that's certainly not going to be conducive to getting the work done on time. So that's how we ended up here.
Jeremy, related to what Ms. Yetter just asked, as board members, we get a lot of comments from the community about things that are important to them. And one, I would say I frequently heard about juniors are secretly driving their cars to campus and parking. I must hear that at least once a week. And when somebody's in a rush, 5 times a week. So this might be an opportunity to sort of tighten procedures, consequence those. Seniors driving makes me nervous enough. I don't need 16-year-olds that just got their licenses driving too when we have a policy. Graduates of 2010, 2009, remember when not everybody got a spot, even if they were seniors, and they're a little resentful that everybody does. This might be an opportunity to tighten all of that. Maybe if juniors are driving, they forfeit spots as seniors. I don't know. I don't want to be like Estoppel about it, but.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
So I can promise you that we have a new AP here at the high school, and
Isn't
Mr.
he
Mello
sheriff in town?
has embraced the parking lot duty. On day one, I witnessed him turning juniors back around and sending them home. He's had this conversation with many juniors who have asked about driving. His answer has been clear to every one of them: no. No juniors are driving. If they get caught driving, they'll be asked to bring their car home. We've contacted parents. We'll do whatever we need to do. But part of his rationale why the answer is no, and no for everybody, is because we knew we were going to lose all of these spaces. So Mr. Mello has really been on top of it since he started. And I'm sure that as more and more juniors get their licenses, he will be staying on top of it. And the fact that he knows every face and every name and every student certainly puts him at an advantage to know who's walking in from the parking lot, who's driving in, and who's not. So it's something we'll certainly keep an eye on, but I know it's something that Mr. Mello has really been on top of.
And even from the safety perspective, the younger our drivers are, the more likely they're bringing other people in, which is not really what they're allowed to do. So I'm glad to hear somebody is, because then I can tell people, oh, they're on it when I get spoken to at ShopRite.
Just don't go to ShopRite.
I really should stop going to ShopRite.
That's the lesson.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Actually, I did have one question,
More
but
to
it's
come?
more about pricing than anything else. I know that steel's been an issue. Is that kind of regulated or moderated itself, or are we still in a really tough time with steel?
Steel has been fluctuating up and down pretty hard over the past 9 months. Do I think it's leveled off? I'd like to say yes, but I just don't know. We're also seeing costs go up and down in metal products like ductwork, window mullions, and things like this. But I think we have been able to keep a good track of what we think the costs are, given where we are in our overall project. So we've been including those costs within our estimates that we're doing throughout the course of the process. So I hope that it goes back down, along with a lot of other things, but it's hard to predict 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now.
And one final question, since the Health and Wellness Center is one of the longer sections of the project. When is I know it's way too early, but I'm sure you've got a schedule. When is the framing of that expected to be done as opposed to everything else that goes around and inside?
Ooh, I would like to be out of the ground within the first 6 to 8 weeks. So 8 to 10 weeks, you'll probably start seeing structural steel.
Summer.
So that would be probably, yeah, say late June, maybe early July.
And then 6 months for the rest of the project.
Yeah, yeah. Once you get the frame and the outside up, it's going to take you about 3 months to do the interiors and the synthetic turf and all.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks a lot. I see you have a NISBA resolution on your agenda. I just say we're going to be there in 2 weeks, so if you're in Rochester, stop by and see us. We will be.
Miss Barr will be there.
We'll be showing off your designs, so
I'll
you
stop
can
and see.
come share it with the rest of the state.
Have some coffee.
Okay.
Make sure you get a free pen or something out of them.
5 free
Good
pens.
You'll have friends up there,
There
Mr.
you go.
Formley.
It's good to know.
Barbara makes friends no matter where
She
she's
certainly does. Thank you for that.
I gotta say, at the NISCUS conference, KG&D was there, and people were taking the virtual, like the goggles tour of inside of
Oh, cool.
our space. It was pretty interesting to watch people tour the space.
And now we're looking at the ugly front of our middle
Oh,
school.
it's not ugly, it's just old.
This is the last year you have to show that picture.
In the 1970s, that was state-of-the-art, thank you very much.
That doesn't say much about the 70s, does it?
Would you like a formal introduction?
He can introduce himself. What do you want to do? Okay.
Oh,
Ladies and gentlemen.
ladies and
Very
gentlemen.
exciting.
So our next presentation will be our middle school report. And to do that report is our middle school principal, Travis McCarty, and our assistant principal, Dr. Kern Mojica. Thank you.
Well,
All right, good evening, everyone. So again, my name is Travis McCarty. I have the privilege of being the principal of Putnam Valley Middle School, and Dr. Luft was correct. We actually got an entire staff photo in front of our main entrance because this is going to be our last year
Opening
with
day.
that brown facade. So I know some people are going to miss it, but we're really looking forward to a new entrance and a facelift, as they say. And as the architect said, lots of exciting things going on at the middle school. I'm going to try to add to that. In addition to the construction that's coming, we had a wonderful opening to the school year. And I can't remember a smoother start to the year, so I'm going to knock on wood because things have been going very well. So I just have a few pictures here of students coming off the bus. Our first day, we have a new student in the lower right-hand corner, Mrs. Lucier, helping him get into his locker. That can always be a challenge for new students. And our incoming sixth graders. A couple more pictures of students happy to be back in school during our first week. Some have seen each other over the summer, others have not. And I want to talk a little bit about enrollment change because we are down a bit at the middle school. As you all know, the trends that continue. Our fifth grade is virtually unchanged. In 2018, we had 121. 2019, we currently have 120. Sixth grade, we're down a little bit, 128 to 125. Seventh grade, we're actually up 127 last year to 132 this year. They're our largest group in the building. And our eighth grade is down. We were at 133 last year and currently at 119. So a total of 496. Last year at this time, we were around 509. So down a bit. These numbers actually have fluctuated a little bit since the beginning of the school year. We've had some students move in. So at one point, we were down to around 491, and we're back up to 496. So that could actually, we could be above 500 by the end of the year. We do see some incoming students actually in the spring and near the end of the year. It's an interesting trend that we've watched.
Can I interrupt you real quick? The seventh grade that went from 127 to the eighth grade 119, where do those kids go, the students go?
Sure. So some students move out of district, and that's been the trend there. for the most part, they've moved out of district.
That's interesting. Everything else went up except that. Great.
Yeah,
Yeah, by almost 10.
It'd be interesting. I don't think that's a historical trend to lose students from 7th to 8th, so it could be a one-time, one-year thing, students moving out of the district. But it's certainly something, we track this historically, so we can certainly go back and see, is there some sort of historical trend of losing students from 7th to 8th grade? But I believe this is sort of an anomaly.
actually, the area we usually see incoming students in 6th grade
Right, because of the Catholic
when they come out of
schools.
Catholic
Right,
schools
mhm.
or other schools. And then you see the change from 8th to 9th grade. So some students do go to private schools and other places after they leave 8th grade. So it's not a historical trend of a change in reduction from 7th to 8th. It's a good question. It'd be interesting to see where these students wound up. But I can say just off the top of my head, I know the students very well because we're a small school, and some just moved out of district.
I mean, it's really only 8 students. It just looks like a big number.
Yeah, since everything else went up, I was
Yeah,
curious why
right.
that one went down.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. So these are the results of our ELA state test scores, our students that were proficient with the standards. And I gave you a 3-year trend here. So our 5th grade was at 30% in 2016, 2017, 34% proficient in 2017, 2018, and 39% proficient in 2018, 2019. And that would be students with 3s and 4s being proficient. 6th grade, 35% in 2016, 2017, 69% in 2017, 2018, and 64% in 2018, 2019. 7th grade, 36% in 2016, 2017, 46% in 2017, 2018, and 39% in 2018, 2019. And then finally, 8th grade, 40% in 16, 17, 47% in 17, 18, and 53% in 2018, 2019. And if you'd like to follow the cohorts, you can actually go diagonally. So if you start off with the 5th grade in 2016, 2017, that cohort went from 30% to 69% to 39%. 6th grade, 35% to 46% to 53%. 7th grade, 36% to 47%, and then the 8th grade at 40%. So I like to look horizontally over the years and then diagonally to watch those cohorts hopefully grow. And these are the changes we see. We're still at about a 32% opt-out rate regarding ELA and math. So that does factor into our numbers a little bit.
Do you find that the opt-outs are higher in 7th and 8th grade as kids go home and tell their parents, all my friends aren't taking it, opt me out?
That has been the trend. We see the greatest opt-out rates in 8th grade, followed by 7th grade, followed by 6th, followed by 5th. I will tell you that our teachers are doing great work with our instructional support specialists and our new curriculum coordinator. We've been doing wonderful work in addressing the standards and really looking at student work and trying to help them improve. So we hope to continue to see those numbers rise.
But Dr. Lutz, isn't it almost impossible right now to make a trend analysis because they keep changing the test year to year, everything changes, and then they come out and say publicly, you can't compare this year's results to last year's results. So it's really hard for us to show any real progression in anything when it comes to these assessments.
Yeah, well, the numbers we're sharing here, the percent proficiency certainly falls under that. As the exams change, the percent proficiencies will mean different things. The metric that we use to get a better gauge of where we fall within the state or the region is we'll look at our percentile rank. Because the tests change for us, yes, but they change for everyone across the state. So our percentile rank gives us a sense of how we performed compared to other schools in our region, other schools in our county, other schools in the state. So that is, that makes it an apples-to-apples comparison because everyone takes the same test. So that's the type of metric we would use to measure our own personal growth. The other piece of this is teachers use these scores to go down to the individual classroom, curricular standard, and in some cases, student level, to use the data to determine where we can do better. So regardless of the changes in tests, the standards are the same. So really that data analysis of the standards is most beneficial to us because that tells our teachers where our students did well and where they did poorly. It doesn't necessarily matter what percent falls in each column.
But the biggest problem you have here is because the size of our district in each grade, and then you take the opt-out rate, 5 or 6 students, that's a plus or minus 5 or 6, almost 4 or 5%, so it's very difficult.
Well, and the other measure we also use is iReady. So we use another program as well to see how students are progressing. And there's a nice correlation, and students don't opt out of that. So we have more of a population to look at, which is nice. With our math scores for last year, I'll just progress from 2016 up to 2019. So our 5th grade was at 46%, up to 61%, and then 59% for 2018-2019. You'll notice quite a change in 6th grade. We went from 37% in 2016-2017 to 41% to 77%. 7th grade, 42% to 52% to 43%. And our 8th grade with the asterisks, because it does not include Algebra 1 students, 37%, 18% to 32%. So again, you can follow the cohorts diagonally. If you start with 5th grade, 46%, 41%, 43%. 6th grade, 37, 52, 32. 7th grade, 42, 18, and then 37%. We did have a 100% passing rate for our 8th grade Algebra 1 students, and that was one cohort. We are currently up to 2 cohorts this year and 2 cohorts of Math 7A. So I know some districts have their students their Algebra 1 students sit and take the state exam. We do not. It's actually a different curriculum. I don't feel it's fair to our students to just ask them to take that so that we can improve our state test scores in that way. But these students do take the Algebra 1 Regents as 8th graders.
So which 2 years, I think it was 2 years, where 8th graders were not given the opportunity to take the Algebra 1 in the middle school? That was 2 years, right?
Yep.
And that's 2016-17 and 17-18?
Yep.
So those two numbers, the 37% and the 18%, would include all those students
More students.
that didn't take the Algebra 1,
None of
Regents.
these students took the Algebra 1 Regents.
but they would have been able to if they were eligible to take algebra. So
Correct.
What might say those students that were more math inclined and were able to get into the algebra class were not entered into an algebra class. They were just in a math 8 class, and so those students were in those tests, right?
I believe so. Struggling to follow you a little bit there, but
But the question is, what year did we start offering algebra again for 8th grade students? So you have an asterisk for all 3 of those years, which would mean that.
sorry, it should be 17, 18. No, that's right.
So is this the 4th year in a row?
Sorry, the 8th grade 2016, 2017, the 37%.
Yeah,
That is the year that we didn't have.
that's all students.
Yep,
Okay, that's
And
what
it
I
was
thought.
just 1 year?
Well, the other years would be before it,
2 years.
before it, yeah.
2 years. So
Okay.
So
2
the
years
18
ago.
The 18% was when we went to algebra, so you're essentially taking, I believe it was 28 students out of that 8th grade pool.
Well, okay, so that's why that number.
Part of the drop,
that
and then you
number makes
remove,
sense.
I think that year,
Okay.
50% of 8th graders opted out of the exam.
Yeah.
Right.
That
So we
was a
talk
big
about-
opt-out year, 2017.
Right, to
18.
Guy's point,
So that
your,
makes-
your end value is so low to begin with.
Right.
Right,
Because-
and you removed, yeah, that makes sense, okay.
So we have a 50% opt-out rate in math. I think it's 42%. And we have a number of students not taking the exam. So it's a very small percentage of kids that are rated.
Gotcha, thank you.
So since we're speaking of testing, I figured I'd also include our earth science scores for last year. We had a 95% passing rate. And our Science 8 group, which was a very small group, we had a 40% passing rate. So Science 8 were the kids who weren't in earth science, and then the earth science kids were the rest. So we had more students take the earth science than we had take the Science 8 last year. We had very successful scores in earth science. So changes this year for our 2019-2020 school year. We have earth science for all in grade 8. And there's a couple reasons for that. We want to challenge our students. And the other reason is we noticed that with earth science for all, in a sense, where they had a choice, it became a tracked program. So we essentially had our really advanced students and students who really wanted a challenge, or parents who really pushed their kids to move into earth science. And then for our Science 8, we noticed quite a few behavioral concerns and some students who just had difficulty grasping concepts. So those sections of Science 8 were difficult. I think the kids had a little bit of a challenging year, and our earth science saw success as it has in past years. So with our earth science for all this year, we have put in 2 sections of collab, and our students have lab every other day as they have every year in the past, and we're going to try to run some extra supports for them as well once we get to the second half of the year. So we're hoping that with earth science for all in 8th graders, it's going to be rigorous, and we put in the essentials for success for all of our students.
Courtney, can we talk about one thing at a time?
Sure.
So I have 2 questions about that. Do we have a self-contained or special class, or whatever the terminology is, population in the middle school at this point?
We do not.
Okay, so you don't have that cohort. So everyone is accessing the parallel curriculum, the curriculum through either collab if they're receiving.
It's either
special
collab
education
or
services.
general ed.
Okay,
So we don't have an achieve small class.
okay. So that's my first question. Do you
Yep.
want to comment on that?
No, somebody else.
Because my second question is, I know I've been reading that a trend has been to shift from earth science in 8th grade to living environment in 8th grade. It's considered the easier regions. It gives students, since living environment is a must for a basic Regents diploma. Has that ever come up in conversation here?
It's been on the table for 6 years.
Ah, that's conversation.
In fact, I've been in communication with neighboring districts. I know Blue Mountain actually does living environment for all,
Okay.
but they do it for 2 years. So they start in 7th grade with not an extra lab. They do it right within their class, and then they continue it in 8th grade. We've had conversations. It was actually my same thought process. I've only talked to one person that said to me, "Really? I think earth science is easier than living environment." And I said, "Really?" I said, "You're the only person that I've ever spoken to who said that." And he said, "Well, that's the way my mind works." So, no, it's been a great conversation. It will continue to be a conversation. I'm hopeful that the supports that we have in place, the majority of our students are successful. We do know that it's virtually impossible to get 100% passing rate, which would mean the students then retake the earth science regions as 9th graders.
And
but
that
we
is
do-
part of their high school transcript.
It is.
Which is an impact.
Yep. So we continue to talk about it. It's also talking about a personnel shift between buildings in a sense.
Yep.
So we've been in conversations with Dr. Entrieri, and we'll see what comes of this. But I'm hopeful that we have a great success rate.
Right. Rockland has made the switch mostly. Almost all of the Rockland districts are doing earth science, living environment for all in 1 year.
Yep.
So,
Hmm.
but, just curious.
Yeah.
On to math.
So this year, we have 2 sections of Math 7A. That's kind of a continuation of last year, but those students are now in Algebra 1. So we have 2 sections of Algebra 1. And as you heard prior to me coming up, our facilities project, we're planning to make it the least impactful on instruction. We've had lots of meetings so far, and come April, there will be some slight room changes. Come June, it looks like our chorus and band students will be relocated, either within the building or hopefully the possibility of coming over here for a few periods. We also talked about lunch, the possibility of some students, 7th and 8th graders, coming to the high school for lunch, and our 5th and 6th graders actually having lunch in the gymnasium. So the food would be trucked over to the middle school, as much of it is now, and they would set up, eat, and then we would break down the tables, and it'd be a bit of movement, but I think the bright spot for me is it's only 3 months, and I keep saying that. And as we all know, middle schoolers are very flexible, and so are middle school teachers and middle school administrators. So please bear with us. We will be transparent as possible, and all teachers have been contacted and communicated with, and I have presented to middle school families at back to school night that these changes are happening, and we'll make it the least impactful as we can.
If you're not flexible by nature, you get flexible by practice.
Yes.
So,
Another great change this year, and Dr. Mojica was really on the forefront of this. He reminds me often, is that the way that it's always done? But why is that the way it's always done in Putnam Valley? And I have to think about that because I've been in the district for 15 years, and he really forces me to think sometimes, why have we always split our lunch groups? And I've always said, well, it makes it easier management-wise. We don't have the space. And he said, let's try it. So we know that our enrollment is declining a bit, and we put all of our students in 5th grade together to eat. And you know what? Nobody sat alone at any tables. All of our tables are full. All the kids got to sit with who they like and who they want to sit with. I usually get 30 to 50 emails at the start of every school year. My son or daughter's best friend is not in their lunch group. Please switch their schedule. I can't do that because then I have to switch everyone's lunch schedule. So we have had only one parental email regarding the switch in saying, you know, there's a child in the grade level my child doesn't get along with, and I just say, hey, have them sit at opposite ends or let's talk it out. And it has worked seamlessly. Dr. Mojica has been in the lunchroom, down at recess. So the kids come all in, they eat together, and then after 20 minutes, 25 minutes, some of them go down to the turf. Some of them stay up to the upper level and play basketball. And on rainy days, everyone just goes into the gymnasium. So what we feared for many years and saying it couldn't be done, all of a sudden we make this transition, and it has been really wonderful. And I have to say kudos to our monitors because they've been circling and cycling through their stations and ensuring that things do run smoothly, because with this project, we're getting a larger dining hall. So I can only imagine how nice it's going to be when we have that little bit of extra space, because there's a lot of kids in that space. We're still under occupancy. And the kids really have made it run smoothly along with the monitors and Dr. Mojica. So these are just a few pictures of what that space looks like. Kids really love going down on that turf. It's a highlight of their day.
I mean, I think when the split lunch happened, there were 150 extra students in the middle school. That's almost a lunch period. That's more than the class.
Sure.
Right now, on top of it again. So, but I think what happens is you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it, till you realize we don't have that anymore. So we already have half the class from 15 years ago.
Sure. Other changes this year, in our Mandarin Chinese class, we have a new teaching assistant from PNW BOCES, and she is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. So it's very nice to be able to be in the room, assisting students and working with the teacher from Orange Ulster BOCES on the screen, and I have an image of that following. We are back to 40-minute class periods for 7th and 8th grade. I think last year we reflected a little bit on 80-minute block scheduling. We found that the hallways were congested because in the middle of the block, students would get up and go to the hallways, but they didn't have to go from point A to point B. They had to go from point A back to point A. So some didn't go and use the bathrooms, some just stayed, and it led to difficulty in transitioning. So we're actually looking, I'll talk about this a little bit later, at moving to 60-minute block scheduling for 7th and 8th graders. It's a hope. We have a scheduling task force that met in September, and our next meeting is actually tomorrow. So we're looking forward to talking more about that. Nice addition, we have Mrs. Kildoff, our K through 5 school counselor. She actually spends 2 days a week at the middle school, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Ms. Coleman, who's with grades 6 through 8. Now, I don't want you to think that Ms. Coleman can't work with 5th graders, or Mrs. Kildoff can't work with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We do. But this has been really nice to have another counselor's point of view, and Ms. Coleman's new, so she had some great ideas as well. And they started their lunch bunch, and 5th graders have made a great transition to the middle school. I always know how the parents get a sense and nervousness, and I've had parents pull me aside in the community and go, you know, I was very concerned about the transition, and my child has had a great year so far, enjoys all the clubs, and enjoys the 5th grade team. So this is just an image of our Mandarin Chinese in progress, and you'll see sometimes we have PowerPoints up or games up on the board, and Miss Jessica is there on the side helping students out. And here are our student government runners. So these were the students who were brave enough to stand in the pack and give speeches in front of 500 students. And congratulations to all the student government winners. I actually went to their student council meeting this afternoon, and there had to have been 30 to 35 students just gathered together for student council. So not just the student government winners were there, but the student council as well. And I shared with them that I'd like to have lunch with the student government people at least either once a month or once quarterly to hear more of their ideas. What's interesting this year is the speeches weren't solely geared toward, we want more recess equipment, we want better food in the cafeteria. They were very thoughtful and insightful, and I really appreciate that. And I want students to be more open to come into my office and share ideas because it's powerful. So congratulations to those winners, and kudos to those students that stood up and gave speeches. So some of our summer work, we continued to work closely with our new curriculum director, Ms. Mistretta, and our instructional support specialists. We have a new Encore, social and emotional learning, which integrates Yale Ruler. So we have social and emotional learning in grades 5 and grade 6. So all students get that course for 7 weeks. And what's interesting is originally we had thought we were just going to work with Yale Ruler, but we're also working with our school counselors who come into the classes once a week or once every other week. And they're working with Second Step program on making good choices. And I'll tell you, we have Mrs. Parchin and Mr. Soprano who have worked very well with Mrs. Coleman, Ms. Coleman, and Mrs. Kildoff. We have our One Book, One School initiative. This year it's The Misfits, and our students are reading that in our advisory class to start the day from 7:45 until 8:02. And of course, Mr. Spittle's not here this evening, but kudos to him for our new wellness trail. I can't tell you how many of our students have benefited from that already. Teachers come down, they take a radio, and especially in these SEL classes, they'll take a radio and they'll take their students around the mile loop. And you can see Miss Sommer here with her class and their smiles as they were walking the trail themselves. So you have a lot of cool ideas for those, like outdoor adventure ideas for our PE teachers. And
the class trip right at home.
It is.
No busing.
It is, and maintaining that trail as well. So some of the renovations to the middle school, we didn't have any major renovations this year. We know there's a lot coming. But I know Dr. Luft started the innovative classroom groups. So actually many of our middle school teachers were part of that cohort. So you'll see on the left-hand side, those seats, I call them hockey pucks. They're actually stackable, and some do rock, so they swivel a little bit at the base. The chair the student in the right is in, those actually rock, they pivot in the middle, so it's not a rocking chair at the base, it just rocks on the seat. The upper right-hand corner, this is outside of our tech room. We have 2 larger tables with high-top stools. So our students, this is a hallway. So they're working in a space that's considered a hallway, but we have this furniture for them. We also have a green screen painted on the wall, and we have 2 rollable tables for students to video in front of that green screen. So now we have 3 locations at the middle school. We have a portable green screen on our 2nd floor. We have a wall painted in Mrs. Sherwood's office, and we have a green screen wall painted outside of this space, all for videoing for our students. And down in the lower right-hand corner, that's our art class, and we do use that space for classrooms as well. It's got an interactive TV, rolling larger tables and rolling chairs. So students really benefit from that movement. Long gone are the days of desks and chairs and rows, kids with their legs and feet underneath the tables. Everything kind of moves, which is how some students are as learners. So I spoke a little bit about moving forward 2020, 2021. We're looking to implement a 60-minute block schedule in 7th and 8th grade. We're really lucky right now with 5th and 6th grade. The pod model was brought back in 6th grade a couple of years ago, and I saw the benefit of that as a teacher. I got to know my students much better, and the students went from ELA to social studies seamlessly, and that humanities part was very flexible. So those students get 60 minutes and then 40 minutes. Or you could arrange it 2 60-minute periods and then an 80-minute period, depending on how your co-teacher feels. So there's a lot of flexibility in grades 5, 6. We've kind of been handcuffed a little bit in 7th and 8th grade, mainly due to certifications. And again, last year we tried the 80-minute block. We're back to 40, and I think 60 is the happy medium. And I haven't talked to one teacher yet that has said, no, I'm upset with seeing fewer students for longer periods of time. So instead of 5 sections and seeing the kids for 40 minutes like a factory model, you would see 4 sections, and it would be a 60-60, 40-40 rotation. So we're still working out the kinks. We hope to get back to the board and Dr. Luft around December. Right now, we're in the phase of, do we have enough rooms, and do we have the personnel? Because when you get creative with scheduling, sometimes it means adding, and we just have to be thoughtful with that. I know you've asked questions throughout. I appreciate that. But do you have any additional questions regarding
No, thank you for what
the middle school? You're not going to be able to recognize it next year with the new facade.
Now, the all room is getting turned into what again? Is that where guidance is going to be?
The all room is going to be our AP's office. It's going to be school counselors, along with our psychologist and our social worker. It's also going to have like a little suite for students to go to a safe space who need to be seen. And then there's going to be a conference room, and the copy machine room is going to still be there. There's a lot going into that middle space, but what we saw was it wasn't so conducive to being a classroom, even though it was nice. That flexible classroom is moving downstairs, right behind my office at the front of the building. So it's going to be right next to the library and right next to the Learning Commons. So it's essentially being relocated.
You
Yeah.
both participated in the color run this
Yes.
last weekend? Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're good sports.
Thank you. I enjoy the color run. I enjoy trunk or treat. You know, my kids go through the district, and it's really is a great community. And I was sharing with parents tonight at our Washington DC Parent Info Night. We have about 55 families signed up right now. And I was on Facebook, and I joined the middle school group. And there was an image from 1973, the year the middle school opened, 72. So in the spring, they went to Washington, D.C., and someone posted an image of the group in front of the White House. And I'm looking at it, and my wife goes, "Isn't that John Pellegrino?" Now, I started 15 years ago. Pell was here maybe 5 before he retired, but I considered him a founding father of the middle school. And sure enough, it was him. Big hair and tall, and it's nostalgic. I recommend anyone joining the Putnam Valley Middle School group. I'm not sure who runs it, but it's really interesting. The people were like, "Yeah, do you remember there were no walls and everything was open?" I don't remember that. I remember the carpet and the blue basketball court. So there has been great change even over the last 15 years, but there's more to come. We're moving in the right direction. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, that was fun.
Oh, yeah. It's gonna get sweet.
Notice we ask more questions about curriculum and instruction than we do about audits. But we do ask questions
That's good.
about audits. Why are we having problems?
What problems? You have a problem?
No, we're not going to argue about this.
Yeah, find a new location. I'm like, it looks different from over here. All right, so
That's scary.
what's going on over there, Dan?
You're projecting.
I project well, sorry. So I'm standing in for Dr. Doherty tonight. She's actually at Putnam County is sponsoring a student wellness panel this evening at Tilly Farm. I know sponsored by P&W BOCES and the Westchester Putnam School Board Association. So she's attending that evening tonight. So I'm filling in on our 2 policy reviews. So it's our second reading of the homeless policy. So this policy really relates to students who are eligible for schooling based upon the McKinney-Vento Act. And I know that last time we discussed sort of the wording around who's eligible and whether it be the district of last attendance. So I don't know if there's any outstanding comments, concerns, questions. If nothing else on this policy, it'll be coming up for resolution. Good?
I'm good.
Yeah, it's hard to see it. Yeah.
And do
All
we
right.
have a designated McKinney-Vento liaison now? Is that Ms. Dr. Doherty?
Correct. If it wasn't, it would be after this evening.
But would the, in terms of some of the work with the families who are designated, does that go to our, I know we only have one social worker in the district, our
Yep.
social worker, our guidance staff?
Certainly, although Dr. Doherty oversees it and is the liaison for the school district, it's really something that begins sort of boots on the ground
Absolutely.
with our psychologists and social workers and teachers and administrators. Sort of anyone has the sense that a student may be in that or knows that it's coming, certainly those students are pulled in, reach out to the parents, and do whatever we can do to support those families, making sure they're aware of the law and what their rights are and what choices they have. So that, I mean, they can choose to remain here or they can choose to attend school where they're placed, but making sure they're aware of what the options are. So certainly, it's something that we've seen an increase in. I don't know if the increase is necessarily related to more people becoming homeless or if the increase is more related to knowledge and awareness of it and their rights. Certainly the latter is something that we've made a concerted effort to do. So we're doing a first reading for the parent and family engagement policy. So this policy is required under Title I in order to receive federal funds. We had to create this, so it's based upon the NYSBA draft document. really what the premise of this is that the school board believes that positive parent and family engagement is essential to student achievement and thus encourages such involvement in school, educational planning, and operations. So I'm just going to highlight some of the. So it talks a lot about what are the opportunities we're providing parents to engage them within our programs, activities, and what opportunities they have to play a role within their child's education. So throughout the document, you'll see references to opportunities in which parents have to inform the district on their beliefs for how Title I allocations or how Title I spending should be allocated, and opportunities for them to participate in not just the Title I allocations, but also to involve them within, empower them to be active within their child's education. So some of the ways we offer opportunities for parents to provide input on our Title I funding is through listening hours. So we had one this evening prior to the board meeting, a variety of parent engagement activities throughout all 3 buildings and throughout the school year, informational sessions, grade level meetings, administrative meetings. Later on in the document, we talk a little bit about groups. So we invite in our Education Foundation, we invite in the PTA, we invite in boosters and other entities that represent the school district, and invite them in and provide them opportunities to see how we're allocating our funds, what sort of data we've collected based upon those allocations and how well everything's working, and then provide them the opportunity to inform us how future spending may be allocated. We cover some of the ways in which we make these meetings more accessible for parents. We talk about holding meetings at flexible times. So our PTA meetings are during the day when the representatives from the PTA are available, obviously listening hours before a board meeting or in the evening. So just making sure that there's an opportunity for all community members to be involved in these decisions at a time that works for them. We plan on using more surveys to gather parental input, and then continue to consult with those community organizations I spoke of before. So in terms of building capacity, we noted here that we plan on holding parent engagement evenings that focus on academic content, and then helping parents understand their child's progress. Another one focused on parental use of technology. And then some of the outcomes we hope to reach out and communicate with and work with parents as partners, implement and coordinate parent programs, and to continue to build ties between the parents and the schools. So some of the things from a board perspective that we would like to do is to have opportunities to discuss the effectiveness and allocation of Title I resources during open board meetings. So this is something that we could put on the agenda periodically throughout the year, discuss where allocations are currently taking place, discuss the benefits and weaknesses of those programs, and then to have conversations about how to best utilize future Title I funds. And then again, partnering with the PTA, the Education Foundation, the Teachers Association, and the CSEA, and involving them within these decisions as well. So that's sort of a high-level overview of this new but newly required plan in order to receive policy, in order to receive Title I funds.
Do we have any, are any of these things available in languages other than English? Or like, can we have a meeting, say with Spanish-speaking, if we have a Spanish-speaking person, just so that parents whose English is not their first language don't feel like they can't follow or don't understand? Or do we not have enough of those student families that would benefit from that?
We have not yet had. The document itself can be translated once it's posted onto the website. Okay. It can be automatically translated into a variety of languages. We have not had a parent engagement evening specifically geared toward those parents. I don't know how many we get, but it's something we could certainly maybe RSVP and say, if this is a need, let us know, and we'll make sure we have someone there. There's certainly opportunities for us to explore how to engage all parents and not let language be a barrier.
Well, I know like an ESL person might reach out to those parents of kids who are, maybe, and who might be hesitant otherwise to come because they're not sure what questions to ask or how to ask them. And we used to have a SEPTA, which we don't have anymore, Special Education PTA, because the PTA takes all children now. But I know sometimes parents of students with special needs also might need a meeting more geared towards how they can work with their children.
Or navigate the system.
Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
So,
I
just,
know, Laura, you make a good point. Our ENL numbers have gone up in the last 15 years. They've tripled from 15, 20 so years ago. So maybe we do need, like at the start of a back-to-school night, have a 6 to 7 welcome night for those parents where it's presented in if it's one language in particular, I don't know if it is, but primarily, you build it into some of the already existing.
and sometimes
Activities.
if a teacher reaches out, other than just from the district, they might be more comfortable responding and coming in. I'm just.
Well, as I'm reading this policy, and I know we have recently negotiated a contract, as much connection-building activities with parents as possible. I'd love to look at having some community outreach evenings built into our contract, like an orientation to have fifth grade parents, welcome fourth grade parents, and those kinds of things. Have that built in so that there's more opportunity for those.
And we do have an ENL parent night in the works.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
So this is the first reading.
First reading?
Correct?
Yes.
Correct. So if there's any other feedback along the way, certainly pass it along. We'll make sure it's integrated into the document before it's shared for a second reading. Thank you.
And now for the grand finale.
Mrs. Farley, did you get your marching orders?
Just the green, the one, yeah, that one. Okay, so I know everybody got the overview of the proposed resolutions for the NYSBA conference. There's one bylaw amendment, there's a bunch of proposed resolutions that are recommended for adoption, and there's also 6 that are proposed not recommended for adoption. And that document looks like this, that's just the summary. But in your email where this would appear, there's also, and Maureen brought some copies today of the whole, the rationale for each resolution, as well as the NYSBA rationale for why they do not recommend those things. So I don't need to go through all 26, but did anybody have any questions or concerns? All of them pretty much are supported by the Westchester School Boards Association, even the ones that are not recommended for adoption. Westchester Putnam School Boards Association is supporting the not recommendation. So they're supporting them
They're
as.
also not recommended.
They're also
agreeing,
not recommending. The only one where there's a question, because the group viewed it as an unfunded mandate, is the requirement that local school districts continue to make determinations as to the substantial equivalency of education delivered in non-public schools. So that's the only one where they say they're opposed, because, and I personally am opposed, but I didn't know if anybody had any other, because I would vote opposed unless it's number 7, unless somebody has a reason why I should not.
I want to find the detail.
I think it would be a huge cost, and not only a monetary cost, but political,
Yeah.
public relations nightmare. So, anyway, so I will vote opposed to that unless somebody here can tell me why I should support it. Okay,
It's also too
if you
vague.
read over it and you come to any that you have questions or concerns, please, feel free to email me and I'll take because I will listen at when I go in as a delegate, each district will present theirs, and there's a lot of discussion about people jump up and support, people oppose, and they talk, and I'll have to listen and make a decision. Basically, I'm going to stick with what's recommended, but if I hear something that, like, wow, I didn't think of that, I might think differently, so, anyway.
Did I read, I can't find it now, of course. There is a resolution here looking for action to make, tenure renewable, correct? Isn't there one in here for that?
No? I don't,
I thought I saw one about,
I don't, and I
you-
just looked them over before I came, I don't remember that one.
I think I would have noticed that too, Joe, 'cause that's something we have talked about.
I just,
That makes
I swear I saw something.
Could it be under the
not
hiring
recommended?
teachers without teaching certificates? Like what the tenure changes in that case?
I don't know why. I can't just make it up.
Well, sure you can.
Sure you can.
Let's see, speed zone cameras, limit on BOCES superintendent,
But that's a summary document. Let me look at the regular thing. Hold on.
restraining orders prohibiting no. Definition of child safety zones, vape products.
Resolved in New York State Board, no, that's not it. There are nine occurrences, that's not it. That's
For
not it.
when is the conference? Is it 2 weeks or this week?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So we don't have another board meeting?
We don't. I will be there at the
At
next
the
board
next
meeting.
board meeting, that's what I thought. Okay, so
Just do a find for.
I'm doing it.
That's
I'm doing it right now.
don't snap at the treasurer, please.
Resolved that the New York State School Board Association support legislation that creates a process for tenure review and renewal occurring every 5 years throughout the career of all tenured public school employees.
Where is that?
This is potential resolution submitted by the Ontario School Board. It's on page 33 of the booklet. This process will include student, parent, and colleague feedback, will not be driven by test scores, is intended to be instructive, not punitive. And there's a rationale.
Oh, these are potential resolutions.
these are
so they're
not
Yes,
up
these
for
are
voting
potential
now.
resolutions.
Okay.
It's whether they
So
actually
somebody's
come
gonna come up
up
and present that.
Right.
So that,
For future conversation and potential adoption at the next,
no, at that meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
they're gonna,
okay.
somebody's gonna stand up and say, on
They
behalf
haven't
of the
made it-
Ontario
They haven't
School
made it
Board.
yet, they're gonna bring it up then.
So
and
this
then
is
look
kind
for
of
a second
teasing
and
that they're
everything
planning
else.
on doing that. So
And what do you think?
I think it's a positive thing.
Okay.
That's me.
Okay.
Basically saying 10 years, not lifetime.
Okay.
See, I
Yeah.
did read it. I found it I
did
found it
read
in like the appendix.
You're not having
did.
a
Okay.
moment. Yeah, I have to say I would support that as well.
Okay.
I had to be recertified every 3 years as a fundraiser. I mean, come on, who am I hurting?
Right. Well, yeah.
And most of the ones that they're not recommending are because either they're too vague or they're
Right.
not clear
It's not that
enough
the
for.
idea behind them
Right.
are not
Right.
right, it's just,
Or there's already something, so they feel that something's already in place that takes care of it.
Right, or there's a broad principle that's stated, and this is more picayune, and they don't think that
The details fleshed
And they don't
out.
want the state to tell you that this is now the law. They want districts to be able to solve some of those, make some of those personal decisions. So for what works for their
I do
district.
remember going to one meeting, and there was this one school district that had like 8 of them, and they
Yeah.
just kept coming up, and it's all, you could tell it's just all micro issues they were dealing with in a personal,
When you read
level.
over it and you think, now, I wonder what happened in that
Right.
district this year. So, okay, all right, sounds good.
Great.
Okay.
Moving on, is there, for the superintendent's report, Dr. Luft.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I had mentioned earlier, prior to the board meeting tonight, we had a listening hour. We had several parents attend, so I just wanted to cover some of the topics we spoke about. We spoke a lot about the transition to middle school, from 4th grade into 5th grade. Several of the parents that were here just had students within that grade level, and sort of that conversation organically began. I told them my story when I was horrified when I walked into the middle school as a 6th grader a long time ago and was completely lost within that rectangle somehow. But I think we sometimes underestimate what that transition is for students who, some started in elementary school at 4 years old. They get a chance to sort of experience the elementary school a wing at a time. They're walked to locations, to specials and things of such. And then when they get to the middle school and when they're all of a sudden on their own, it can be overwhelming for many students. So we spoke a lot about the things we put in place, changes we've made to 5th and 6th grade over the last couple of years, reinstituting the pods, and really sort of carrying that elementary school model to some extent into the middle school while still releasing responsibility and providing opportunities for students to grow while they're there. We talked a little bit about really reaffirming our belief that when we combine the middle school and high school bus runs, that there would be a moderation effect of the high school students on the middle school students on the bus. I think certainly our discipline data from the buses have told us that. And then a parent had shared a very personal story of where their own child was maybe not being as safe as could be on the bus, and had a 10th grader come up and say, "Stop." And
Dude.
they stopped. We talked a lot about social emotional health and wellness. I mean, I think that's probably the #1 item on everyone's priority list. Ms. Mistretta spoke a little bit about our partnership with Cove Care and the elementary school and the middle school. We have someone from Cove Care coming in to work with students around making healthy choices, about really maintaining good social and emotional health at an age-appropriate way. So I know that Ms. Mistretta and the principals have been working with the specialists from Cove Care, and that's something that's going to be kicking off
At the end of this month, yes.
at the end of this month. And I also wanted to note that the high school is having 2 full days of a workshop for 11th and 12th graders that includes assemblies and small group instruction and small group discussions around social and emotional health. We spoke a little bit about the anonymous alert system. Some of the parents had a question about the system, how it works, so we talked a little bit about that. And then we finished up the meeting talking a little bit about the facilities project, the logistics, and the phasing, and what that'll look and feel like for middle school students as that work is happening. So I just wanted to cover a couple of things. I had a slide that was computer died. So we had several students recognized by NYSSMA for being area, all state. So we had students recognized for the all area, all state new mixed chorus, and the choir, and the all state band. I'll make sure this slide with everyone's name is shared. And it's truly a testament to the students, their hard work, and the dedication of their teachers that work with these students for many extra hours to bring them to this level. And again, I wanted to acknowledge this level of achievement of the students. I want to congratulate the new inductees for the Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society. TV's got a mind of its own. We recently celebrated our homecoming with the football team, earning their first victory of the school year, 7-6. We had the Education Foundation Colored Run. There's our slide with the students who were recognized. That just went away.
And there it goes.
Um,
It's 15 minutes of flame being taken to a new level.
The Color Run is certainly a highlight of the year for many. I know I bring my own 2 boys. Everyone enjoys throwing color on me, even though I wasn't running. But it's a great event, and I know every penny they raise goes directly back to our school. So I wanted to commend all the work that the Education Foundation puts into that event and getting it up and running. And in fact, many of us here either participated as a person throwing color, or in my case, a person who people threw color on. We have some upcoming events. This Friday is our middle school Student of the Month breakfast. We have a flu shot clinic at the middle school and the high school for faculty and students. We have 10:15 and 10:16. We have our elementary school and our math school math nights. PSATs are coming up on Saturday, 10:19. We have DOT is holding a meeting for the stakeholders related to the Pudding Street overpass coming up next week, I think on 10:15 in the evening. And then we were actually, I was invited as a representative of the school district to the groundbreaking ceremony the afternoon of 10:16 to say a little something about what this overpass will mean for our school and for the safety of our students. So I will be there at that meeting talking a little bit about the safe way to get over the Taconic with school buses full of many kids.
Are you saying they're actually breaking ground on the 16th? Like, or they're doing the shovel thing on the 16th?
I assume it's the shovel thing. I was recently, me, Dave Spittle, and Mike Koenig did sort of a tour of that, figuring out what our transportation plan is going to be for Roaring Brook while it's closed. There's different phases of that work, but there will be a point in which the crossover of the Taconic will be closed to us. So I wanted sort of a first-hand view of what the road, so sort of it's a back way out of Roaring Brook down to,
Pudding Street?
no, just another name for it. It eventually comes back out on Pisco Hollow Road, but there's another road that connects to it first. But it comes out to Pisco Hollow Road almost on 301. It's a significant detour and a fairly windy road for our buses. So we actually have a great partnership with the town. I've already had conversations with Sam Oliverio and Larry Cobb about what is this going to mean. We'll have future conversations. Just during our drive, we sort of made a list of things that we wanted to make sure to follow up with the town. Like, for example, our highway department's going to have to use that same road to access Roaring Brook to plow. So we would like to coordinate with them to sort of be able to follow the plows up into that development to make sure that the roads are clear. They'll be cleared by our own highway. This is our hope, at least. They'll be cleared by our own highway department, who has to travel on that road anyway to get to Roaring Brook and then maybe back out. So we've had great partnerships in the past, and I have no reason not to think they'll continue. But those are some of the things that we'll be discussing within Putnam Valley locally. But so this stakeholder meeting, I know one of the things that the Department of Transportation already reached out to me about was the timing of this. At one point, they were going to start in the spring, the closure, and then be done by the end of the summer. So that would have affected one school year. So I was okay with that. And then they were like, well, we might not be done by the end of the summer, so it could still be closed in the fall. So now we're affecting 2 school years. I said, that's not going to fly. So the last I heard, and I'll obviously have an update next week, is they were going to delay the closing until after school was out. So we'll be fine for this entire school year. They'll close it sometime in July, and then next year's schedules will be built on the fact that that closure will be in place up until whatever point it's open, and then we can change. So that's at least the last I heard, what our plans are moving forward for that. I'm hoping I get a gold shovel or a hard hat or something like that, but I have no guarantees.
Is it a public event, Dr. Lift, or by
Technically, yes.
invitation only?
Technically, yes, it is a public event.
Because there's a couple of former employees that I would love to reach out to. Marilyn Higgins, a former TA, who I remember when I came into the district 15 years ago, talked about taking pictures when her children were babies and there was no stop sign even. So there are parents in this district who have been having this conversation for 35 years. And I think for those people,
She's going to the informational meeting.
yeah, I just, for those people, the fruits of their labor, that we didn't even know they were laboring, is coming to fruition. It may be a little headachy for us, but it's been a long time coming.
I just don't know that you want a whole lot of people in the middle of chronic.
No, probably not.
Well, I was asked if we'd be willing to host it in the event of inclement weather, so if we're hosting it, you're more than welcome to crash the groundbreaking. So, my last item, and then I was actually going to ask Ms. Mistretta to say a few things. I just wanted to recognize, I know this was happened early in the spring, but Alex and Keiko Waters were awarded an Academic Achievement and Commitment to Community Service Award by State Senator Sue Serino. So Dr. Inchireri and I were invited to a town board meeting and where they were recognized. So it just sort of came up in the paper recently, and I know they're two tremendous students and athletes and all around good people. So I just wanted to recognize those two young women and congratulate them on their achievement. Ms. Mistretta?
Sure. So I know that Ms. Podesta and Mr. McCarty have spoken a lot about the opening of their school year, but I just want to reiterate that we've had some very successful back-to-school nights at all three of our schools. And just recently, we had very successful picture days at elementary school and the middle school this past Monday. In my new role, I've had the opportunity to visit all three schools, and like Dr. Luft had just shared, even when I go into the middle school, I'm still a little bit lost, which is unbelievable because I can navigate the elementary school probably with my eyes closed. But one of the reoccurring themes that I really see throughout the district right now is true collaboration. So collaboration amongst the administrators, collaboration amongst the teachers, and what I'm most proud to see really is collaboration amongst the students. And I know that our principals have shared specific examples, but I just kind of want to just highlight a few things that I have seen throughout the district. And so I just see, I'm seeing a lot of team and department meetings and increased collaboration with teachers and also with students. Recently, I visited a 5th grade classroom where students were working together to measure temperature, and I was just so impressed with the discussions that they were having and the higher order thinking questions that they were asking each other, and kind of challenging each other and saying to each other, you know, are you sure that that's the right temperature? Like, let me double check, but really doing that work in a respectful manner. The other thing I wanted to share is that we recently, in fact today, had a middle school teacher come over to the elementary school to observe a elementary school AIS teacher. So we are beginning the process of doing our classroom visitations, and right now we're starting with our non-tenured teachers, visiting some of our veteran teachers, but we're hoping to expand that and have more visitations for all teachers. This week I worked with this morning I met with our 3rd grade team, and earlier in the week I had met with Shannon Tarkington and Marissa Tarkington to discuss our 3rd grade Pen Pal program. So that's something that we sort of piloted at the end of last year, and with 2 classes, and it was very successful. And the 3 classes that didn't, or the four classes that didn't participate were not happy. So I really thought that it was a great way to bridge our elementary school students with our high school students, and also a really great opportunity for our students to practice another area of writing, friendly letter writing. And so we have decided to expand it across the entire 3rd grade. So we're going to be working, Mrs. Tarkington in the high school will be working with her 10th graders and 1 12th grade class, and we will be exchanging letters with all of the 3rd grade classes. And then at the end of the year, they'll have a little get together where they'll come over. So looking forward to that. I also just wanted to share quickly that our CEE, which is the Center for Environmental Education that we are working through with BOCES, was here this Tuesday, and they worked with kindergarten exploring the weather with My Senses. So the students were exposed to various kinds of weather within the Hudson Valley. An environmentalist came into each class and talked to them about using their 5 senses to learn weather. So they did things such as like listening to a shell and looking through a prism, smelling a jar, and then the classes made their way outside to sketch pictures and write words that they observed in nature. Our 4th graders also participated in a CEE program, How Beavers Built the Hudson Valley. The grade level met for a whole group assembly in the auditorium to learn about how beaver pelts were once used in the Hudson Valley for trade purposes and the importance of them. And then they broke up into smaller groups to learn about trade blankets and how they were able, how the Europeans were able to trade goods in order to, Europeans and Native Americans were able to trade goods in order to help each other meet their needs. And the CEE is coming back next week for another program with fourth grade. So we're very excited to be able to offer these unique learning experiences to our students. I think I just wanted to also just give the reminder about our homework help night that I know Dr. Luft had mentioned, which will be with Mr. Coleman and myself next week on Tuesday, October 15th at 6 p.m. at the elementary school. So we hope to see people come out. Thank you.
The same time as the open house?
What's that?
I said, so it's the same time as the open house about the Pudding Street thing.
Oh,
It's
is it?
Pudding Street,
Oh.
yeah, stakeholders meeting is at the same time as the elementary
Now I
school
have to
method.
choose.
Yeah.
I hate having to choose.
Oh, that's right, because Barbara, you were there last time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll take it.
Well, I can fill you in.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. My computer froze. I'll be with you in just there we go. Okay, is there anybody from the PTA, PTSA here this evening? So I'd like to open it now on public contribution on the listed agenda items. And moving right into new business. Ms. Farrow, can you start us off with number 1?
Resolved on recommendation, Superintendent of Schools, the board hereby creates a .6 FTE part-time social worker position at the high school, effective November 12, 2019, and appoints Kayla Morales to the position as a 1-year part-time .6 FTE appointment, effective November 12, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, on Step 1, MA prorated of the PVFT salary schedule. Ms. Morales holds provisional New York State social worker certification.
Second? Second?
Questions or comments?
I just want to clarify, this position is replacing the position that we typically contracted out through Cove Care. Lorraine Anderson had done it for several years at the high school. The decision was made to reallocate the money that was budgeted for that consultant position and use that same money to hire our own in-district social worker. So this is a new position, but it's replacing a position that's been in the budget for several years.
All in favor? Aye. Number 2.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint the to accept the resignation of Asunta Sadana, a teaching assistant from the district, effective October 10th, 2019, as per document number 84-20, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second?
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 3.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the second reading of policy 5151, homeless children, document number 81/20, and the first reading of policy 1900, parent and family engagement, document number 86/20, documents attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second,
Questions or comments?
if we vote positively for this, policy 5151 will take effect tonight.
So, and we've spoken that in length now. All in favor? Aye. Number 4.
Resolved to accept the fiscal external audit report as presented to the board at this meeting, including extracurricular activity funds completed by PFK O'Connor Davies, the independent auditors for the district, and the district's response/corrective action plan management letter for the fiscal year ending June 2019, as per document 85/20, attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Number 5.
Resolve the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept the internal audit report completed by Acume Partners and the district response corrective action plan management letter on the capital project and construction management audits, referenced in the official minutes of this meeting as document number 87/20.
Second?
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Number 6.
Resolved that the Board of Education authorizes KG&D, the architects for the district, to submit the district-wide capital improvement project plans for the projects approved by the district voters on December 4th, 2018, to the New York State Department of Education for their approval.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Let's get this party started.
All in favor? Aye. Moving on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda item number 1.
Resolved to approve the consent agenda, items 2 through 5, as presented to the board at this meeting.
Second,
Questions or comments?
we're approving additional assignments for 5 teachers, and these are like 1 to 2 hours, and it's for 1 or 2 days, where they're working either with special ed children or did some special curriculum work and or developed some workshops. We're approving a contract with the Ace American Insurance Company for the liability of our storage tank that's underground. We're approving additional clubs and advisory roles at the elementary school. And the clubs are Kids in Character, the Safety Patrol, and the Sustainability Group Club. And finally, we're approving additions to the substitute tutor list.
Questions or comments? That was questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Opening up the public comment on any topic. And I'd like...
Actually,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm
Public
sorry, I don't
comment.
really have a real comment, other than I think play performance is coming up soon. It's in October, at the end of October.
Veterans Weekend, right before Veterans Weekend.
Okay, so since we only have 2 more meetings, just getting the word out, I think it's Almost Maine,
Yes, it is almost.
which, you know, is maybe Dr. Wills will come back and see it. I'm imagining she probably will if she's around.
Oh, I bet
I just wanted to let
she will.
everybody know that that's
Coming up.
that's in the works, and I see that the students are working really hard on those rehearsals as we speak.
All right, thank you for that. Anything else from anybody on the board? Barbara, have fun in, is it
Rochester.
Rochester.
I've been there. It's-
Be nice and warm.
It's going to be cold.
You never actually have to leave the building. It's fascinating. So you're in an artificial environment for hours and hours at a time.
Just good recycled air. Love it.
Next 2 years, it'll be in New York City, so y'all can go.
Yes, we did go.
Yes.
We need to
All
get
right.
our students to perform.
That'd be good.
It would be good.
So resolved to convene an executive session for 2 matters of collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the Taylor Law, after which time no further business will be conducted. Go ahead.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody.